Anyway, all right. So why don't we kick it off? So Sager, thanks for joining. So I'm gonna kick it off. Just quick introductions. Obviously, on my end, I'm Victor Lopez, co-founder and CEO of FlexPoint, and I'm very excited to have Sager formerly from Middleground Technologies. Now I guess it's Ntiva. So thanks a bunch for joining, Sager. So why don't we kind of kick it off by just giving people a little bit of background on yourself, Sager, and maybe from there, give us a little bit of background and context on Middle Ground Technologies and sort of where you guys ended up, and then we'll get into the details from there.
Sounds great. It's good to see everyone on the call now. For those that are watching the recording, hope you get some good value out of the experience that I'm about to share. So, Victor, thanks for the intro. Sagar Pandya, based out of Chicago, Illinois, one of the co-founders of an MSP in Chicago called Middleground Technologies. We were lucky enough to build the business to a point where we were acquired by a larger MSP called Ntiva that's based out of the East Coast. My background, born and raised in the Chicagoland area, live here with my wife. She is in the healthcare space. And really my background was, starting right out of school, I went to DePaul University. I've had a knack for IT and computers ever since I was a kid, like most of you probably watching, right? It's just something that grew from a young age. And started my career at the age of 18. Got Cisco and Microsoft certified early on, was really serious about becoming a systems engineer, did corporate for about 4 years, and then met my co-founder, Isaac, at an IT service networking company together. Worked in the trenches for a couple of years, and we said, hey, why don't we start an MSP? It's a new term. This is like talking 2009, 2010, right? We're now getting into the managed recurring model. So him and I co-founded the company together out of a study room in a library, thinking that we could just earn some extra cash on the weekends and on the side, just like many of you that are watching, right? Just to have some supplemental income. We had no idea that, more than a decade later, we'd be able to transition, right, the company into a much larger organization. So the journey was super fun. We landed at a great organization called Ntiva. They share a lot of the same values as us from an organizational standpoint. They have a phenomenal leadership team. And it's just been an exciting journey the last 6 months, integrating our customers, our employees, and our processes and software into the Ntiva organization.
Awesome. So that's probably a good jumping off point. So thanks for that. So maybe just before we kind of jump into a little bit more of the details around, what's sort of the topic in terms of what made you all start thinking about an exit and eventually that whole process, which we'll kind of dig into it. Maybe a little bit more in terms of where Middle Ground was. So anything you can share in terms of number of employees, a number of clients, any verticals or anything that you guys specialize, just for some of the folks in the audience in terms of like comparing themselves, to your business at exit versus kind of where they are maybe.
Yeah. Exiting your first business, this was our first, right? Exiting was a very, very tough decision. And it's not something that we just woke up one day wanting to do. And look, we all know the MSP business, it's a tough business, right? You have to deliver services for your customers. You have to compete against an endless amount of perfectly capable competitors. You got to fight off cyber threats 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? You have to be sure that your employees and your staff can deliver the right service for customers. You have to manage client expectations. The list goes on and on. It's not an easy gig, Victor, and you know that with all the partners that are using FlexPoint.
I see it every day.
You see it every day, right? It's not an easy business.
Right.
And especially, most MSPs, they're started by technologists, people that either worked in an IT role, worked in some type of senior director of IT manager role. And we all jump in like, hey, we have the IT experience. How hard can it really be to launch an MSP, not knowing that there's a whole business side of the organization that has to be managed correctly? So we obviously learned that. And the best analogy I give is we jumped off the cliff and we were building the plane on the way down, right? And we had to learn everything along the way. How do you do billing? How do you do taxes?
Yeah.
How do you have performance improvement conversations with staff? How do you elevate them to become, better productivity execution and more efficient in what they do? How do you manage customer relationships? How do you do sales and marketing? How do you
Yeah.
collect payments with things like
Yeah.
FlexPoint, right? To help
Yeah.
us not have long days of AR. So given
Right.
all that, given that it's such a tough business, we started thinking, a few years ago, we're like, hey, our growth was mainly organic. We had a
Hmm.
lot of referrals, which again, a lot of you listening to this can relate to this. It's a lot of
Yeah.
word of mouth. We
Yeah.
did a little bit of paid advertising on Google. We did a
Okay.
little bit of social media. We did a little bit
Yeah.
of networking, right? To
Yeah.
try to get us to grow our client base. We were not sales marketing folks from the get-go. So we had
Hmm.
to learn the skill. And we
Yeah.
thought, a couple of years ago, right after COVID, we're like, how do we make the impact that we're making today on a much larger scale, right?
Yeah.
How do we help more businesses? How do we help more end users be able to do the great things that they do because they rely so much on technology? So that was really, Victor, the beginning was a few
Yeah.
years ago. It's like, how do we build an organization that has a larger impact? We
Yeah.
had two avenues, right? We can
Right.
either ramp up our marketing efforts,
Yeah.
ramp up our advertising spend,
Yeah.
build that business. Even if it's paid advertising, it's still an organic way to grow. We were
Sure.
bootstrapped. We didn't take
Yeah.
any investment. So all the money we made from receivables and invoicing customers went back into the organization. So that
Yeah.
was path one. We could
Yeah.
continue down the path
Right.
with the slower growth.
Yeah.
Or we could go down a path of, hey, how do we jump onto an existing rocket ship? How do we
Yeah.
get to a point where we can make that impact on a larger scale? That was really the point where we said, okay, we have, we were about 20 or so employees. We were mid seven figures in revenue.
Yeah.
We had close to about 100 customers that we were
Wow.
supporting.
Yeah.
Every single one of those clients was a managed IT customer. We didn't do any
Yeah.
break fix. We didn't do
That's great.
project work.
Yeah.
So we came to an inflection point. How do we double everything? And how
Right.
much time is it going to take? And are we willing to put in that effort to continue to organically grow? Or is there a way to take some chips off the table, but also join an existing organization so that
Mhm.
first, myself and my partner Isaac can make an impact on that larger scale?
Yeah.
And secondly, for our staff to have better career trajectories and a much larger, Ntiva has hundreds of employees, right?
Yeah.
Make a larger growth trajectory for them from a careers perspective. The last thing I'll note here to tie out this thought is our customers. How do
Mhm.
they get depth to more services? How do they get better served in the stuff that they're trying to do from a larger
Yeah.
scale?
Yeah.
We have a larger pool of people now that we can use to support in some of the things we're trying to do. So it wasn't a decision that we just woke up one day and said we want to sell. It was like I would say a 3 to 5 year trajectory that got us to the point where we felt comfortable
Right.
knowing that we had a gauntlet in front of us to get through in order to get to the finish line.
Yeah. And would you say that you kind of reach this point where you're like, okay, we can continue to grow organically ourselves, right? Build out, invest more in the business, invest things like sales and marketing. Um, did you feel like at a certain point you got to that place and you're like, okay, we've accomplished a lot on our own. It's time for us to see what else is out there and see how, with another partnership, just because you had bigger ambitions in mind, or was it more you felt like Middleground itself had reached a point where you kind of done what you could do with the team that you had in place or the resources that you had in place?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think Victor is a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
I, as well as my partner, we're very ambitious, very competitive entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
We want to win. And the reason we want to win is so that first, our employees have opportunities that they may not get elsewhere. Secondly, our customers can tap into some amazing services and skills that can help their businesses grow, right? And thirdly, it helps elevate myself and my co-founder Isaac as leaders, right? And gives us
Yeah.
additional opportunities to continue on the path of growth in that journey. So it was partly our own ambition, and it was also partly we've done what we could. And it's a very competitive landscape. You can appreciate this
Yeah.
being on the East Coast in New York. I mean, Chicago, you throw a rock and you can hit
Yeah.
75 different
Yeah.
MSPs
I
in the
bet.
city, right? So
Right.
competition continued to grow. And as you all know, watching or hearing this live, we are constantly pressured by security threats. We are now cybersecurity practitioners, whether you're an MSP or MSSP. We have
Mhm.
to fight off these crazy threats. We have AI now that's
Yeah.
injecting more opportunities for threat actors to cause issues for our clients and try to hack into our MSPs. it got to a point where we're like, we need to join and get some additional resources around us
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah.
And we needed to join, an organization that was able to do that for us.
Yeah. So let's switch gears slightly. So you mentioned that all of your 100 customers were managed IT, right? So I think either people listening or will listen to the recording might be at that point where they're not there yet, right? Not everyone is managed IT. They might still have legacy break fix or projects, sort of that business. So as you think back on when you started preparing for an exit, right? So you mentioned it was a couple years before you kind of came to this realization, okay, now maybe let's start thinking about exit. But as you started preparing for an exit, right, really started to think about it more seriously, how much did that have an impact on, maybe just starting from like potential people who would acquire middle ground, or even the type of partners that you were looking at? Because I think we do have a fair amount of people probably tuning in who are probably in a similar position, right? They maybe not totally fully managed services, some split. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And I think totally fine if you're a break fix and MSP hybrid shop. There's
Yeah,
no right or wrong, right? Like break fix clients, they still need IT services. They still have the same needs as managed IT clients, right? You're just billing them in a reactive versus proactive mentality. So it's
sure.
totally fine. And there's buyers out there in the space. M&A is still very important, as you can tell, with all the great conferences that are coming
Yeah,
up. There's still a huge need, right, to fill this void here. So
yeah,
having break fix and managed services, you can still consider, an exit or a transition if you are at that point in your organization. Just know that different buyers will essentially generate and calculate valuations differently from each other. So if you're mostly a managed IT with no break fix, they might calculate valuation differently than if you are more break fix than managed IT. So you
yeah,
really have to look at yourself as an organization. I
yeah,
think first and foremost, I want to tell you, start to finish for an M&A process. I don't care what size organization you are, in order for you to effectively first make the decision that you want to sell, get any co-founders on board and aligned, find a broker, go out to the markets, date potential buyers, go through due diligence, right? Go through integration, and then get onto the other side. It could be anywhere from 18 months to 36 months, start to
yeah,
finish. Okay.
yeah,
You can do what you want to try to speed up the process. But the biggest thing in M&A that I've learned is hurry up and wait. You just have to be patient and go through the journey as it's going to unfold. So as an organization, if you're sitting in an owner's seat right now, regardless of how many employees, regardless of how big your company is, really have to ask yourself, what is going through an acquisition going to do for me, my organization, my employees, and my clients? Is it going to give better access to resources, better response times? Is it going to lessen the stress for you as the owner and give you more family time or time away from the office? Is it you want to take some chips off the table and you're done? You just want to retire
yeah,
and live out your life traveling and enjoying it? Do you want to partner up and grow within an organization as an intrapreneur, right? Versus an entrepreneur? Do you want to grow in an existing organization? Do you want to give your staff ability to have a career plan so that it's not just 5 help desk techs that have to just support 50 customers, because that's
yeah,
burnout territory, right?
yeah,
So there's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. And I think it starts with the owners. I think it starts with partners in the organization. Do you really need to go through this gauntlet of a process? And
mhm,
what does the outcome you're looking for look like? Is it
yeah,
finances? Do you want to get paid? Do you want to just have more customers? Do you want to make a bigger impact like we wanted to? And just understand, going through the process, finding brokers and advisors, it's it's a tough thing to
yeah.
do because you have to
So
make
let's
decisions.
yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So in
Yeah.
terms of sort of the key steps, right? So if you're going back to the future, call it 2 years or back to the past 2 years ago, right? In terms of, all right, you talk to Isaac, we're ready to sell, we've reached the point, we think, we can do greater things with a bigger organization somewhere else. Like, what were some of the key steps that you took to prepare, right, to kind of get you to the place where you were ready? And thinking back on the time, maybe things that you didn't do that others might benefit from knowing about, right? Sort of learning from maybe a mistake or two that you might have made along the
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. So I think the things we did right when we started. And I'll give you a quick timeline on when we started thinking about this.
Yeah.
We started thinking about it July of 2022,
Okay.
right? Almost 18 months ago,
Yeah.
right? We got into alignment. So I think the first good thing we did was Isaac and I fully aligned on where we wanted to go. We talked it out for months, right? Went out of the office, had lunches together. I talked about what his fears were. I told him what my fears were, why we wanted to get there. What was the goal of the process, right? Was it just getting paid? Was it having a bigger impact? Was it relieving some stress? We went through and we got fully aligned. I think that's the number one thing. Secondly, if you have a partner or a spouse or your family, we had that conversation like, hey, I'm about to embark on a very challenging journey.
Yeah.
I probably won't be mentally, emotionally present at home. I may not be able to go away from the office much. I may cry and wake up at 2 a.m. because I don't know what's going to happen, right? We had those conversations with our family so we can set the stage. Then we went in and said, all right, we want to try to see what's out there, right? And I'm sure all the listeners right now or the ones watching the recording, you probably get like 2 or 3 emails a week in your inbox anyway, right? With buyers saying, hey, I'm a solopreneur, I want to buy your business, or hey, I'm a broker working for XYZ, we can introduce you to, you know, some great buyers. Or it might be the buyers themselves saying, hey, I'm with XYZ MSP, we'd love to chat because we have an opportunity in your city, we want to partner up, right? It started with us responding to one of those emails. We said, okay, you've emailed us 74 times. We're going to talk to you because we're considering
The persistence.
the persistence paid off. So it's not all just fake emails coming in. We actually responded to one of the brokers that emailed us and we said, listen, we've seen your name so many times over the last year or so. Let's talk through it. And that's where we started the process, was getting alignment of the founders, getting alignment with family, and then really looking for a broker that could potentially help us. That's, I think, what we did right.
Okay.
What we could have done better was we could have, first and foremost, we could have tax planned a little bit better in this process. I would say if I were to go back into, 2 years ago, I would have probably talked to our CPA and said, hey, you know what? We're considering maybe going to market a year or 18 months from now. What are the things we need to do as an organization to plan our tax situation a lot better, right? How do we minimize our tax liability if we end up selling the company? Because there's cash, there's equity, earnout, there's all these financial things that are going to change. And if not done correctly, that's a lot of money for Uncle Sam. I'm not saying don't pay Uncle Sam and the government, but do your due diligence to try to minimize tax liability 12 to 18 months, 2 years before, so that it's not a game time thing, right? It's like, don't be Tom Brady on the field in Super Bowl at fourth quarter with 2-minute warning, right? That's not the time you want to draw up the plays. You need to draw up the plays 6 months before, right? So you know what's going to happen. So I think that's the number one thing. We should have tax planned a little bit better. I think secondly, we probably should have interviewed more brokers that could have represented us. And obviously there's 2 camps of people. We had a good experience with ours. There's 2 camps. You either go through the broker route, they make the introductions and they help you every step of the way, or you could go, founder to founder, talk to your buyer directly, and then just go through that process. Either way is going to work. It really depends on you. We could have interviewed some more brokers to understand what the layout of the land was and what they offer. And then I think thirdly was there probably could have been, just reflecting back on it, Victor, we probably could have brought in some other senior leaders within our organization that were incentivized to help us get this thing across the finish line. We didn't tell our staff until after the acquisition. That was the decision that we had made as an organization. Doing it in the future, right? If I had to, go back and think about it, maybe there's some folks in the organization that might be in the know, so that it's not a huge burden on myself and Isaac to have to carry either throughout the process in secret, or through the integration process, we could have had some folks that could have helped us execute a little bit better. So I think that's kind of the stuff that I think we did right in the beginning. And if I had to go back into the past and try again, there are some things I probably would have done differently to maybe relieve some of the stress that we had to carry throughout the process.
No, absolutely. I mean, those are some great and probably insightful things just in terms of the M&A consultants. You actually answered one of the questions I know someone had sent in earlier about who knew about the sale going into it, right? Because I think that's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. It's like, who do you trust in management, executive, depending how big or complex your organization is, to know the information before, the acquisition happens? Because right, something can go wrong, acquisition doesn't go through. and those people got to keep doing their job day in, day out, and post sale. But it sounds like from your perspective, you could have benefited it a little from, having more people under the tent, sort of understanding the process and kind of going through that. So maybe real quick before we kind of open it up to the audience here, and like I said, there is some questions that we got ahead of time. But just last thing I'll ask here is just, so sounds like you went through the process about 18 months. You hired an M&A consultant. You had you and your partner were aligned, family, all good stuff. So talk a little bit about maybe once everything was like the paper, the ink is dried, money's in the bank account, hopefully, and the process post sale, right? I think a lot of people don't really focus on that aspect of it, and really the integration side of it, right? Like there's still a fair amount of work, and you're probably going through this still right now, right? The amount of work that it takes to transition your clients over, making sure communicating with clients. So maybe start there in terms of like what that looked like for clients. Like, what did the communication look like? Maybe just high level on the integration side, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Absolutely. And I got to give credit where it's due. Ntiva, with their integration, they've done I think we were the 14th or 15th acquisition. Ntiva has this down to a science.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
as you're talking about potentially going through an acquisition, as you're talking to buyers, ask them for the integration process. Like, is it outlined? Is it fully identified? Is it thought out? Has it been executed? Is it true and tested? Right? Because that's going to make the difference between you keeping your customers post acquisition or them running away because it didn't work out. So credit to Ntiva for having a solid, and they shared this before we signed on the agreement, and they said, here's what it looks like. It was a very long, detailed process. So we signed it's called a purchase agreement, right? That's the document you sign to say, hey, we went through due diligence. This is what we're going to move forward with. We signed that on December 1st of last year, right? We're still going through integration. We're just about, finishing up here in the next couple months. But what I totally underestimated, no fault to anyone else but myself, setting my own expectations. Yeah. When you go through an acquisition, whether you're going to exit or transition into the acquiring company, there is a 6 to 12 or 18-month integration process, depending on the complexity and the size of your business. Yeah. Integration means making sure your staff have jobs into the new organization that's acquiring you, right? Ensuring you move all of your software, PSA, RMM, all of your documentation management, all of your portals for accounting, right? Making sure all of your knowledge is transferred over, deploying agents on workstations. There's a bunch of things that have to happen because you're so integrated within your clients. Your customers need to know, right? Large customers, we were kind of like nervous. Like, we're going to tell them, are we going to deliver the message correctly, or are they going to react in a way that's going to cause some challenges, right? You don't know until you go through the process. Managing those and keeping them on board, making sure they understand, and saying, hey, meet some of our new colleagues. It's going to be great. You have to be that cheerleader for your customers. So, and then also there's the mental challenge of you as an entrepreneur. You've been so used to calling the shots and making all the decisions. Now might be a committee that has to make a decision with you. Maybe you have to go through an approval process. So just know, getting through the purchase agreement, that's 50% of the job. The other 50%, and especially if you have a deal where there's an earnout or a seller's note, right, that is essentially contingent upon your ability to retain status quo moving forward, you have to be very mindful of that and set yourself up. And Victor, that's why I said having leadership folks or C-suite executives that are incentivized and know what they're doing, they're going to support you through those integration efforts so that you can maximize, right, your payout, maximize your earnout. You want your clients to stay. Maybe the ones that are a pain in the butt, you could say, all right, it's nice knowing you. Maybe that's a good excuse to do that. You want to keep your staff, and you want the integration to be as least stressful as possible. These are some of the ways you can do that, just going with the right mindset.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's you hit on a lot of it, right? Especially, I think most deals these days all have some earnout, some component to it. And so, yeah, making sure you have clients, employees, executives bought in for post sale, right? Because that's really what's going to benefit everyone. So, just in the last few minutes here, I'll open it up to people that are joining us live. If they have any questions they want to cover while we're here. Maybe while we wait to see if there's any questions from the audience right now, I'll kind of hit on some of the ones that were sent in earlier. So one of the questions that we had was, did you specialize in any specific verticals like healthcare or anything similar?
So we did not go out and specialize in specific verticals. And what I mean by that is like our website, our marketing material, it wasn't catered to any one or few industries. But we started noticing as we grew as an organization, there was probably 4 or 5 industries that we seemed to have the most client concentration, right? There's a few different industries, right? For us, it was healthcare, it was financial services. We started getting a nice little niche in the manufacturing space because those folks, I think, are going through some digital transformation requirements. We supported a lot of professional services businesses, right? Like B2B operations. And then we were starting to also build a little niche in the nonprofit space where they need help, right? They have needs just like any for-profit business. You just have to position that a little bit better so that you can get approval for funds and help your organization support them. So while we didn't intentionally, Victor, go out and say, these are the 5 we're going to
Right.
do,
You weren't
we
focused
just
on,
we did an analysis. We're like, hey,
yeah.
cool. We got 4 or 5 little niches we're working on, and
Yeah.
that's what we're going to tackle. And that's based on just auditing clients.
Yeah. So I got another one for you here in terms of, so the question is, was the buyer that you ultimately went with, were they focused on your specific region, i.e., they were located in another region and were looking to enter your region? So just, I guess, from a geography standpoint.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. One of the main drivers that helped us outside of all the other great things about Ntiva was they have a Chicago-based presence, more than 100 employees locally here in the Chicagoland area. So it allowed us to plug into an existing ecosystem. There were other buyers that we were talking to that said, hey, we're not in the Chicagoland area now. We want to build our presence. Maybe Middleground could be the platform to help us do that. It's just something Isaac and I were not prepared to do at the time with the information we had at hand, during the decision point. We wanted to join, like I said, make an impact on a larger scale. How do we do that? We got to join an existing operation. So for us, there was an existing operation in the Chicagoland area, a pretty large one, in fact. And that helped us transition our employees to immediate roles. It helped our clients make use of immediate resources locally, right, in the Chicago area, both remote and on site. And it also helped us transition and help make an impact immediately in the local market.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, if anyone wants to reach you, what's the best way to get in touch? Email, LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn's going to be the best way. Find me, add me, message me. If you want to send me an email, it's sagarpandya@gmail.com. I'm happy to chat through anyone that's thinking about this journey. It's not easy, but you don't have to go through it alone. There's many of us that can share our experiences, maybe give you some different perspectives so that if you do realize that this is the journey for you and you want to potentially explore what an exit or a transition would look like, just having that knowledge and arming yourself with that information, it's going to get you the highest valuation. It's going to get you a stress-free transition, and you're going to have a good time, right? Going through the process. You're going to enjoy learning what your true abilities are as an entrepreneur. And then you get to give other folks in your organization, other opportunities that they may have not had, in your organization as well.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again. It's very awesome to see, the success of our partners and, great stories. So thanks again for joining. Hope everyone found this super useful. And like Sagar said, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach them. But thanks again, Sagar, and we'll chat soon, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, Victor, and super appreciate the FlexPoint team's partnership with us as well. You guys have a great product. Congratulations on your funding round. I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do here in the next few years.
I appreciate that. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.